Good morning, Bitcoin. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin. We're joined by Ed from Renegade Investor. How's it going, Ed?
Really good. Thanks for having me on, Tom. And big fan of WorldCryptoNetwork. I've been on there a few times, and I've done a great job in the Bitcoin community.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on here again. And I think we also have to spoil it for the people at home that yesterday, Dan, Crypto Raptor, and I almost cleaned out this booth. We tried to buy all of his art, but there was one piece left, and I think you got it. So you're the third holder of the Satoshi Wave piece, right?
Yeah, there was some great artwork, and he posted it on Twitter, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I'm getting a piece of that today. And I was only limited to 10, so I literally got straight in.
Right,
and it's quite expensive, but they've done such a good job. I was like, I've got to get some.
That was it, yeah. I was kicking myself later. I was like, I should have negotiated. I probably could have gotten a lower price or some throw-ins, but I was just like, there's only 3 of them. I'll pay. I didn't even ask what the larger ones were because I know I can't afford it. I want one, but no, it was a great art. He did these wood cuttings, kind of similar to Hokusai's The Wave, the old Japanese block print with the Mount Fuji. But now, of course, it's Bitcoin and it's Satoshi. So yeah. I think it's just a great thing. I was psyched that it sold out because I'd put up the thing and I was like, why is no one buying this third one? I mean, I jumped on it. Dan jumped on it. You rarely have that where you get the chance to buy, pretty much an original piece of art. There's only 3 of them. He said he did those as tests for the larger one. So probably he's not going to make more. And certainly the one sold here in Manchester. That's it. We got the 3.
And one of the things I liked most about it was the mountains in the background was the price chart.
The price chart, absolutely.
I didn't even notice it at first, and I thought that was a great touch.
It was a really clever touch, and they had the 3 pieces, kind of different periods of Bitcoin with the price, and then it meant something too, like the tree was blowing away leaves, or Satoshi was calling the bull, and yeah, it's just really great art, had all the layers to it, really thoughtful stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
But now it's time to ask you everyone's most favorite and familiar question. What was your first computer?
It was a Pentium 133.
Oh.
So it's going back quite a long way. I still remember my dad taking me to pick it up in Plymouth, and it cost about, I think it was like almost £1,200 at the time, so it was like extremely expensive, and but I still remember the day we picked it up and I was so excited.
So what's the first thing you did with it when you got it home? You had maybe Windows 95, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was 95, and the first thing I did, I think, was play pinball.
Oh,
the built-in Microsoft pinball space cadet. And I got to admit, I did some work on it as like clip art at the time. So when I was doing like a school project, I'd use really tacky clip art pictures on my work.
Oh, I know.
And I was also a big gamer. I got to admit, I was majorly into gaming as a kid, and even as an adult at some points when I get time. But I absolutely loved it.
One of the main things I remember about the Pentium is that's when I learned how new computers ruined old computers, because I had like a 486 or whatever, and I would play TIE Fighter and X-Wing. It was all right, and I had a joystick, and then I went to my friend's, and he had the new Pentium, and so I was like, well, I'll try this out, get some new Pentium action. It ruined my old computer. Apparently, I was used to waiting 8 seconds for this to load, and 8 seconds for that for load, and then the Pentium loaded in 5 seconds. And then I went back to the 8 seconds, and I was like, no, my computer's awful and slow. Like, I can't even play these games anymore. And I couldn't afford a Pentium for much, much later, but it was an amazing chip and some great games. So what kind of games did you play at that time? I played, obviously, flight sims. But
I think I was always into my first-person shooters.
Oh, yeah.
So it started off on Doom.
Sure.
And then from there went into, like, obviously Half-Life changed everything.
Yeah,
that was one game that blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind, Half-Life. I played that game, I can't even imagine how many times. But yeah, definitely first-person shooters. Then BioShock came along, and I could probably do a timeline of my life in first-person shooters. But BioShock and Half-Life were really 2 series that absolutely blew my mind. And I really think that BioShock and Rapture, the Underwater City, would definitely have used Bitcoin, being like a libertarian society.
BioShock's the one with kind of the Ayn Rand society and the strange undersea creature type things. I've read a little about it. It sounds like a game I'd love, but I never got to it at the time.
It's regarded as one of the best games ever made in the history of gaming. It's a masterpiece. You can play it 20 times and still be absolutely enthralled. Like, it's that
amazing,
good. Yeah.
The only one I got through recently was Watch Dogs. It was really good. It's like a Grand Theft Auto with hacking. So you just like push a button and hack someone's phone, and then you're listening to them, and has a whole thing like that. It's a really fun game.
Yeah, that's good.
So after you got into the games and you had Windows 95, where did you go from there? Were you always a computer person? Did you go and come back to it maybe in college, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in school, I was studying I loved history. History is one of my main subjects that I absolutely love. Along with that, I really lost interest in school around 16. I didn't know what it was. But I was really still into computers at that time, so I started, obviously, like, when you're trying to run games on computers growing up, you have to know a certain amount of IT skills because the thing crashes every like 10 seconds.
Right.
So you're always like downloading drivers, updating files, looking for fixes. And I started to get to the point where I was like building rigs as well. So literally from scratch, just building computers.
Sure.
And my whole goal at one point, I started a company called Steadfast Systems because I figured that I was going to start a business to just do like hardware maintenance, software maintenance, have like a workshop. And I didn't quite get my interest, so I ended up going into application support for a law firm.
That's funny, I used to work for a law firm. Yeah. A similar thing probably. Yeah.
Which was interesting, and I was doing like a help desk stuff, and then moved into duty-free systems. But I went to university, and I started off in computer science, and then went into business IT. So I did that for 3 years and graduated. And
nice.
So I was always doing computers to some degree, which I think is what helped set me up to understand Bitcoin when it came around.
Sure. And then how did you discover Bitcoin? Did you hear about it early, or was it later on?
Yeah, I was actually sitting in my job one day on my lunch break. And I've been in IT for like 6-7 years, and I wasn't that happy in my career. I wasn't really doing the thing that I loved, and I don't know why. I found it really difficult to learn like project management and stuff. My heart just wasn't in it. And then one day, I'm sitting at my desk, and I read about the bank bailouts, and all of a sudden, I'm like, what the hell is happening here? Like, bankers are getting rewarded for like crashing the economy by getting taxpayer bailout bonuses, and I'm like, this is absolutely insane. So I went home that night, started learning all about banking. And that led me into silver and gold. So I started to learn that like the fiat currency system is not sustainable. Debts are growing. They've got to create more debt plus to pay off the existing debt plus the interest on it. And I've just realized that that's like the biggest Ponzi scheme ever. And so gold and silver were like a no-brainer for me at that time.
Sure.
But then it was when I was watching Kaiser Report, because I've been watching Kaiser Report at this point for like 3 or 4 years, and Max Kaiser started talking about it, and I first heard about it at $2 in 2011. And you know, everyone you talk to in Bitcoin has a story of, I wish I'd bought it when I first heard about it. Everybody. But you know, I don't blame myself for that because it was such an abstract, weird concept. I had no idea what it was going to be or what it was going to do.
Well, and there'd been other Bitcoins before. It's really easy to look back now and say, oh, Bitcoin's the one. Of course it's the one. Why didn't you see it or whatever? But Liberty Dollar, E-Dollar, Chaumian Cash, even Hash Cash, all of these other systems, centralized, different attempts. I mean, PayPal even originally was not a cryptocurrency, but it was an internet currency. And it had many of the same goals, paying your friends back, paying someone for a pizza, whatever it is, these kind of things. So to just say, oh, this must be the one, it's going to last forever, it's still pretty clear, like a lot of computer geeks are untrustworthy of things. They say it might be a scam, it might have a virus in it. You know, is it a USB stick or is it a secret message from Iran coming to destroy your computer? I mean, these different kind of things out there.
And it wasn't until... so I heard about Bitcoin, and then after I bought it, I think it was about $40. Max Kaiser did a show called How He Was a Bitcoin Millionaire. And it was at that point, I was like, I'm going to pull the trigger on this. And at the time, I really didn't understand Bitcoin to the degree that I needed to. And then after I bought some, I started doing research, and I actually read, I think it was Turdemeester. He did a libertarian introduction to Bitcoin. And it was at that point I completely understood that, wow, this is big. And when I did my first transaction, so I wanted to buy some Litecoin, so I had to move my coins from Mt. Gox to BTCE, which is like a Bulgarian or Russian exchange, which is actually shut down now.
I know, but, it was always one of the great pirate exchanges. No one knew where it was from. Everyone said they didn't care, but if you left your money in there, woof.
The good old BTCE troll box days, buying like pure coin and stuff. But I wanted to. That's the first transaction I ever did was from Mt. Gox to BTCE, and it blew my mind out the back of my head. I still remember that moment. I was sitting in my chair, and it arrived in 3 minutes from Japan to Russia, and it cost me a fraction of. I can't imagine how cheap it was. And at that point, I sat back in my chair, and I was like, "This is going to change everything." I was like, I literally said to myself, "The banks are finished." At that point, in any kind of the way they exist now, they are finished. And that's when I started to dedicate my entire life. Or I was working in a brokerage. I quit my job and I wanted to just focus on Bitcoin, and I had to work part-time for a bit to to not dip into my Bitcoins too much. But it changed everything for me, like everything.
Well, I remember I had a similar feeling when the MP3 came out, and I was like, instantly I knew that music had changed and that suddenly I had so much more access to music, and I would get CDs from the library and you'd have to return them. But when I had the MP3, suddenly I had a really nice backup copy of the CD and I could keep listening to it, even though I checked it out from the library and returned it for other people to use. I felt the same way, movies, downloading, torrents, all these kind of things. It was just this shock. And then, with Bitcoin, I mean, I found it early like a lot of people, but then a few years later, I looked back on it around the Cypress thing, and I saw Coinbase and BitPay, and I was like, wow, you can use this now. You can buy it, you can sell it, the merchants can accept it, it's a real thing. Whereas before I was like, okay, it's command line, early adopters getting rich. I thought I missed my boat at $1, missed it again at 30. It went to 300, and I was like, oh, I'm just the dumbest person alive. So I'm gonna, if I put, my $300 in, I didn't have a lot of money, but I'll put whatever I have in, and we'll see how it goes. And then just a few weeks later, I started the Mad Bitcoin Show, and I just started to talk about it every day and just tell everyone, because at that point I'd already exhausted my friends. They didn't want to hear it anymore. So I was like, well, I'll tell my friends on the internet. They did a good job ignoring me for weeks and weeks and months, and I was just like still telling them, every day, like still telling them how great Bitcoin is. Yeah. And then eventually now, years later, we have a whole chorus of people on YouTube and on podcasts and all these things just talking about it all the time, and they all have their favorite altcoins and they go up and down, and then they're like, maybe my favorite altcoin isn't so favorite, and the Bitcoin thing seems cool, but there's just so many more voices now.
There are some channels that literally flip-flop on a daily basis on price action, and it's like, guys, you got to zoom out a bit. Like you got to zoom out a bit.
It went up $10. I'm incredibly bullish. I'm buying it all. Oh no, it went down. I'm selling it all. And if you just follow those, you'll lose at the top. You'll lose at the bottom. You'll lose at the top again. I mean, if you do the wrong moves all the time, trying to chase the thing.
I mean, I've actually pulled back away from price predictions following 2017 just because it's just so crazy. And now I just go for a basic accumulate low and sell high. And it sounds easy, but as soon as everything's in a gutter, it's good to buy it. And then when people are doing backflips, start to take some profit off the table. And that way you won't come unstuck in like 95% of cases,
There were some good signs that we should have sold, but we ignored them. I remember that New York Times article, everyone's getting rich, but not you. I should have gotten out. There was a Paris Hilton did an ICO, should have gotten out. It's like these kind of signs came up, but you just, when it's going up, you're so ecstatic, you ignore them. Yeah. And in the same way, though, when it's going down, they always say, like, buy when there's fear, buy when there's blood in the streets. But when there's blood in the streets, it's usually your blood. Yeah. And it's really hard to have the strength to double down.
I think there's very few people in the space that isn't underwater on some trade or investment right now.
Sure.
I mean, 2018 was a brutal bear market, but it's got to the point where, I started to notice how everyone was like calling for like sub 1,000 Bitcoin, which I thought that was like equivalent to people calling 100,000 when it was at about 20,000, Yeah. Just those extreme sort of valuation predictions. And that for me was a sign that we could have been bottoming,
Yeah, they almost freaked me out of my Bitcoin recently. It was down at 33, 35, which would have been the floor. Now we know, of course, retrospect, hindsight, it's been a few weeks. But the hyper waivers were all like 1,000, 1,500, and my mind was like, I can't take these losses anymore. What if I could buy twice as much at the floor? But same thing, it was at 6,000. I could have done the same, but I didn't. And all these other things, timing it is so hard. I mean, if you're going to play with it, maybe take 10, 20%, 30%, put that in your trading stack, put the rest in your savings stack. Don't mess with your savings. I mean, you really, more and more, it's complicated, but you have to separate things into accounts, and you have to have like a strategy to it.
Yeah. Like everything is hindsight in 2020 because Bitcoin is one of the most emotional investments that's ever been created. It's just so volatile. You go from euphoria to like despair in a matter of months, and even like a 7-year business cycle in the legacy system is almost like 1 or 2 years in Bitcoin or 3 years. And so it's really, you got to be careful with Bitcoin and definitely take a step back now and again, because I burnt out at the end of 2017, at the beginning of 2018, and so the price of this bear market has actually been the least of my worries in the last year because I was so ill from fatigue that I highly recommend that anybody who's in Bitcoin, has been in it a long time, make sure you're getting 8 hours of sleep and taking some breaks from Bitcoin because there's going to be plenty more time in the future over the next few years when Bitcoin's going to be surging again. And
well, especially with the trading, if you have those trading alerts on and you're waking up in the middle of the night because it beeped or whatever, and you can't get back to sleep and you ruin your schedule. I mean, maybe you're winning at trading, but you're losing at everything else.
Yeah, and it was one of the most painful lessons I've ever had in terms of self-care.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit sort of, not like crazy crypto, but it's honestly, it's brutal. So you got to be careful with crypto. Make sure you're taking care of yourself whilst you're working in it.
So after you went all in into Bitcoin, you're totally excited about it. What did you do next? Did you help spread the word?
Yeah.
What did you do?
One of the things I started to notice pretty quick was there were so many videos that I wanted to see that just didn't exist. And there was also a lot of FUD coming from, fear, uncertainty, and doubt coming from the mainstream media, which is still a major problem. And that's why I've actually done another video recently which tackles that. But yeah, the first thing I noticed was I want to see a video of that. And I thought, someone's got to create it. And I was like, I've never done video editing in my entire life. I've never created a video or done a podcast or broadcast anything. And I was like, I've got to do this because I was so passionate about the misinformation that was being put out on Bitcoin that it actually brought me to create content to try and tell people the truth about Bitcoin. And it's still an epidemic. There's still propaganda, fake news like Bloomberg, Financial Times, Barron's, Forbes. There's just always so many misinformation articles coming from the establishment media, which obviously have the backing of the legacy system. So obviously they're not going to be favorable towards Bitcoin. And I think even now that's still one of the biggest challenges in Bitcoin is pushing back against all this FUD to give people the truth about what Bitcoin is going to do, how it's going to help the world, rather than this sort of fear-mongering that you see every day in the mainstream media.
Well, and I especially see the mainstream media is only focused on the price. Over and over again, that when it's up, they'll report it's up. When it's down, they'll report it's down. And what's great about that is, they don't offer investment advice, but they're so negative when it's down, and they're so positive when it's up, that they're practically telling people, when it's down, you should sell. When it's up, you should buy, which is the exact opposite of the signal you want if you want to make any money.
Exactly, yeah. CNBC, like one of the contrarian indicators that are out there in the sort of crypto Twitter. And yeah, they've really proven themselves to be just so off base with Bitcoin over the years. And it's one thing that I've just tried to push back against so often.
So you started your own YouTube channel? Or what did you do?
Yeah, Renegade Investor. And I started off, my first ever video was 9 reasons why Bitcoin will outcompete private blockchains. And that is still probably one of the most relevant videos I've ever made, especially now as we see like Facecoin or...
Oh, I know. It was funny, we had the blockchains rolled through in like 2014 and they went away. And now the blockchains are back with like total mania.
Yeah, so now you have all these stable coins, and there was actually a talk here yesterday on stable coins. But yeah, there's 9 reasons why Bitcoin is just so superior to those, because there's all of these are still tied. There's still 9 reasons why there's trust, innovation, surveillance, all these reasons why Bitcoin is going to be great in the long term, because it's very positive in all these areas where it can stop surveillance and is very trustful, and all these corporate coins are just going to fail on all these 9 points. So if you want to watch that video, that's the first one I ever did, and I carried on. I did price predictions. One of my most popular videos was 10 reasons why Bitcoin will destroy all-time highs in 2017, which I think when the price was about $900 when I made that, and it finished the year at like 20,000.
Wow.
But I just saw everything coming together, and I thought, 2017 is going to be this breakout year. There's so many fundamentals that are powering Bitcoin, and actually one of the things I went on to after that was using films to explain Bitcoin. So one of the first videos I did based on a film was something called Bitcoin Banks and the Final Disintermediation, which was based on Final Destination, and how the banks cheated to death in 2008, and how Bitcoin is hunting them down to restore the natural order of what should have happened in 2008.
That seems about right,
And that was really popular. I remember Max Kaiser picking that one up and posting it on his website because he really loved it. And after that, I did one called Bitcoin Humanity's Last Dance Against the Bankers, which is based on Terminator 2, and how the bankers are the T800 analog machines, and you have this T1000 cryptocurrency prototype, which is the liquid Terminator of currencies that's coming in. It's more advanced, it's a more efficient banker killing machine. So I did a whole analogy of Terminator 2 that explains like 100 years of monetary history and the birth of Bitcoin and how it's going to change everything, and did a Terminator 2 narrative. And my most recent one, which I finished about a week ago, was based on Starship Troopers. And this was really to push back against all the fake news that's come out against Bitcoin. Like, there's just so much of it every single day. Even after this latest price spike, it's like, yeah, ignore Bitcoin, people aren't buying it. And, you know, just so much FUD came out instantly. And so, yeah, I did Flows Obviously Starship Troopers. It's almost like a satire of American foreign policy and how the media drums up support to do foreign invasions, in this case on like a bug planet. And it works really well with Bitcoin because quite often in the investment world, sound money bugs, sound money advocates are called bugs. So you get gold bugs, you get Bitcoin bugs. And so it works with the film because they fight bugs. And and so, yeah, it was, I used all the propaganda clips to try and create this fake news narrative as if I was the government or a mainstream media telling people not to buy Bitcoin and attack the Bitcoin bugs. But every reason I give, it's like 7 reasons not to buy Bitcoin, and every reason I give is why you should definitely buy Bitcoin. And I was really happy with it. I loved it. Yeah.
Nice. I've definitely seen the Terminator one, but I'll have to check out those other 2. It sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to try to use movies and other media to help people get into Bitcoin. Early on, we had like Zhao Tong doing all the songs and the raps, and now we have Crypto Raptor doing the songs and the raps.
I watched that last night. It was
very cool. Yeah. So just getting the media into it, helping normal people understand. Also, I think it helps show the level of dedication of Bitcoiners, that people really are into it so much that they will go out there and make the rap and go out there and make the edited, you know, video with the media and stuff like that.
Yeah, some of these videos, I mean, the Terminator one took me 300 hours to make. Well, my latest one was 100 hours, cost me 500, worked with 3 different voice actors, but I do it for the love of it. I don't do that to make money, even though it's nice when you get a few donations on your videos. But for me, that's the passion of it. That's the way I give back to the community, because like Bitcoin has given me so much that I want to continue supporting it going forward.
I think that's it, and that's the attitude I think a lot of other Bitcoiners have. I know I'm lucky to be here. I'm in the UK interviewing people. It's crazy to me. I don't think about it that much, but you know, the donations, the support, the viewers, and then also just talking to people here. People are inspired by this. They see that I'm out there doing what I can do with the videos. They get out there, do what they can do with the code, or start a company, or just start a meetup in your local area. I mean, you just go to a pizza place every week or every month, you know, do once a month at a pizza place and meet some other people. And then, you know, who knows, maybe you'll start a company, or your meetup will get bigger, you'll start making videos, or whatever it is. Everyone can contribute to cryptocurrency because it's really just getting started. Even now, 10 years later, it's still just barely getting started.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for being on. Where can people follow your work and learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, so my main YouTube channel was RenegadeInvestor.co.uk. So that's my website. Renegade Investor on YouTube, and at SKYPE on Twitter, because I love sharks and Bitcoin. So I was like, why not combine the 2?
There you go.
And so they're the main 3 places that I do stuff. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Ed.
Thanks for interviewing. Thanks.